Hey everybody, this is Miguel Myers. The show will start in just a sec. I wanted to pop in real quick to let you sinners in on a confession of mine. I've been keeping a secret from y'all. For the past couple of months, I've been working behind the scenes with Max Booth III of Ghoulish Books and have agreed to come on board and be a part of a new podcast network that he and his partner Lori are starting. I'm really excited and honored to be joining the team at Ghoulish. I love absolutely everything they do: the store, the books they publish, Ghoulish Book Festival, everything. Their whole vibe matches really well with mine, so I think it's a match made in hell. With that said, nothing is going to change content wise. I remain in full creative control of the show, and the format will remain the same. But you may hear some ads for Ghoulish in the show. That's really about it. I believe this is a huge opportunity for both of our brands, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds. But of course, none of this would be possible without you guys, the listeners, as well as my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you in the confessional. Hello, everyone. My name is Miguel Myers. Welcome to My Horror Confessional, where every week I'll have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. We'll discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. Today in the confessional, we have Tim Meyer. Tim dwells in a dark cave near the Jersey Shore. He's the author of more than 15 novels, including Malignant Summer, The Switch House, Dead Daughters, Limbs, and many other titles. When he's not working on the next book, he's usually hanging out with his wife and son, shooting around on the basketball court, playing video games, or messing with a new screenplay. He bleeds coffee and IPAs. You can learn more about his books at timmyerswrites.com. His book, Rainbow Filth, was recently released by Ghoulish Books. It is a weirdo horror novella about a small cult that believes a rare psychedelic substance can physically transport them to another universe. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy you're here to talk about the movie you chose and everything from the bio we just talked about. So first, let's get into the book, Rainbow Filth. Yes, I have my copy. It's back there.
Nice.
So it was recently released by Ghoulish Books, and I just read a little bit of a blurb there. Can you tell us a bit more about the book?
Sure. It's basically about a college student who gets into the wrong crowd, and basically this group of college students and one professor believe that there's this psychedelic drug that if they take it will actually transport them to a parallel universe. And then it's told in half in a police interview segments, and also the main character's account of what actually happened and what led him to be interrogated by the police. So
Okay, nice. So is this a book that you've been working on for a while? Because I know you said you had 15 novels. So
yeah, I write a
is
lot.
this, yeah, that's great. That's great. So what was beginning of this novel? Well, why did you feel you needed to write this one?
um it was kind of it was written in between some other novellas that I was writing, and I planned to do like a novella collection. And then I saw Max's open call for Ghoulish, and I just decided to uh disregard the collection and just submit this to him. But basically I've always loved like psychedelic movies and like hallucinatory fever dreamish type stories. And
Okay, I
so
mean, you kind of picked a great movie.
I did, yeah, because this was basically like a fever dream. Um, but yeah, like I've always loved that type of stuff, and so I just had this idea of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like there was just a group of obsessed people who want to take this hallucinatory drug, and it takes them to another universe that's similar to ours, and maybe it doesn't, maybe it's all in their heads type of story. So yeah, I love that stuff, and a lot of the stuff I write is kind of like that, where it can kind of sometimes feel like a fever dream, and the audience doesn't exactly know like what's real, what's not. And like those are my favorite types of stories.
And so I wanted to ask you maybe for some recommendations or some of like your favorite psychedelic media, but maybe we'll save that for the Sunday school sessions, which,
Yeah,
if the audience doesn't know, is Patreon exclusive. We release every Sunday, so we'll save that for then. But
cool.
so of your other novels that you've written, are they all kind of in the horror genre?
Yeah, pretty much everything I write has like a horror slant to it. I mean, pretty much everything. I can't think of one that's not horror at all.
Okay.
But everything is pretty much horror, like mystery, thriller, fantasy, like dark fantasy. Um, so yeah, that's horror's my genre. I love it.
Nice. Well, that's a perfect segue. Let's talk a little bit about you and your background. So, is horror something that you were always into as a child growing up? Did you have family members who were into it, friends, like a friend group, that sort of thing?
No, that's like the weirdest thing is because nobody I grew up with or my family really liked horror. My dad was into like sci-fi a little bit. You know, he was like a big X-Files fan, which is
Okay.
kind of like adjacent to horror.
Right.
Um, but yeah, like no one was really like influential on me, like that got me pulled over. What did it for me was I was obsessed with Goosebumps books as a kid,
Nice.
growing up in the early 90s. So I was just obsessed with them. And I think the first horror movie I ever watched was Jaws on TV. And even like the edited version was I remember was still pretty graphic back then. So that movie scarred me. And since I grew up on the Jersey Shore,
Oh, you were
I
serious about
was
that.
yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. I grew up on the Jersey Shore, and I still live in the area. And I hate the beach now because of that movie. So and from then I just kind of like I had this weird obsession with just horror movies, and I tried to watch as many as I could, as many as was allowed in my household at the time. So yeah, it just kind of snowballed from there. And then, you know, when I started getting to writing and storytelling, those were kind of the stories that I gravitated towards the most.
Okay. And so, as you were getting older, you were able to choose whatever you're going to watch, stuff like that. Like, were your friends like, why do you watch that? Like crazy horror
Yeah.
stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching I remember um like we would all get together as friends, and they weren't big horror fans, but like I'd always try to like introduce them to like horror stuff. So I'd bring stuff like Evil Dead, which is like, you know, not a movie for like people who aren't into horror to enjoy. Like there's some like horror basic, like Jaws. Like I feel like non-horror people could enjoy Jaws,
Or
and
even
like
that Army of Darkness, like that poster you got back there. I think
yeah,
that could get somebody into that.
it probably could, but Evil Dead definitely not. Evil Dead was kind of like rough for them, and
Yeah.
they were just like, "What the hell is wrong with you? Why do we even hang out with you?" And so I don't know. I did as I got older. I found, you know, friends who actually enjoyed it as much as I did. So, but yeah, early on it was like it was a struggle to find people to like the same stuff, and we didn't have social media, so it was even harder to find those folks.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I've had a similar background to it. I won't get into it because they've all heard me say it, but yeah. So I'm glad to hear that because um, now, like social media, like you said, has allowed me to find a more like a wider net of people who like shit that I like and like the shit that you like. And one of my best friends, Anthony Jerome, who has hosted the show with me as well. Like we never would have met if it wasn't for social media. And we both like love horror a lot. And it's just like what we do. And so I think it's really important to like find your people. And when you find your people, you're like, oh man, this feels good, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome, and that's why I love going to like horror conventions and author conventions, because you get to hang out with people who are just all like-minded and like the same stuff, and it's just a cool environment to be in.
Yeah, and I mean, a confession to you that I have is that we were, and to the audience, we were supposed to record this past Sunday. However, I got the opportunity to go to Halloween 45, the H45 convention in Pasadena, California,
Oh
and
wow.
I've been trying to go to that since the 30th anniversary, so the 15 years, and shit always just conspired against me. I was out of a job, didn't have the money, whatever, whatever. And this time I was like, no, I'm going. I don't give a fuck what happens. And so I literally just got back yesterday and it was amazing. It was invigorating. And I was able to take pictures with everybody. I saw John Carpenter,
Oh,
he
that's
showed
so
up. It
cool.
was it was just amazing. Yeah, like it gave me life, man. It was awesome. So yeah, I completely understand when you say being around other people that like the same shit. Especially like even I'm not sure if you're in New Jersey, but Max has Ghoulish Book Festival, Max and Lawyer Ghoulish Book Festival
Hmm.
that takes place every year in San Antonio. And just being around everybody there, like all the horror authors that are there, it's like electrifying. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
So I completely understand that. So before we get into the movie, could you let everybody know how they could follow you, how they could support you, buy your books, all that sort of stuff?
Sure. I'm pretty much available on every social media platform out there. I hang out probably on Instagram and Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it these days.
Mhm.
I'm on TikTok, pretty much anywhere you can find me. And then I have the website, which is not frequently updated, which is timmeyerwrites.com. And you can buy my books anywhere books are sold. Uh, Amazon is a frequent place people buy books, so I'm on there as well.
And I believe you can also buy it on ghoulishbooks.com.
Yeah, the new one you can get directly from the Ghoulish
Yes,
website.
yes, the new
So
one. Right, right, right. Um, okay, so let's get started. So if you haven't already, when you clicked on the episode, you saw the name of it. So don't give me shit on this. Tim is here to talk about Haxan from 1922. It just had its 100-year anniversary. Now we're in 101 years in this past September. So you've had all this time, Tim. Why haven't you seen this movie?
that is a good question. I'm a slacker, and I don't know, like a lot of these old movies, and this is about as old as they get.
Yeah,
I don't know, like I've never just sought them out. Like I only watched Cabinet of Dr. Caligari like for the first time maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago,
okay.
which was a great experience if you've never seen that movie.
Yeah, we actually did
Um,
it. We did it with John Baltusberger last season. It's a great movie.
oh, cool. Yeah, it is. It's super trippy, and just the imagery is awesome. And there's like a lot of similarities, probably because of just the time it was is made to this film. But yeah, I mean, I'm just I don't know. It just slipped under the radar,
Is
and
it one of
it's a
those
shame.
ones that I'm sorry to interrupt you. Was it one of those ones that you just hadn't heard of it, or you had heard of it, but you just never got around to it?
I'd heard of it. I just never. It was just never one I sought out and
Okay.
wanted to watch, which is crazy because like I love like witchcraft stuff, and
Yeah.
I always wanted to write like a witchcraft story, um, and this is like a perfect just like an overall it's like snapshot of witchcraft during a very specific time
Yeah.
in our history. So, but
Dude, a psychedelic witchcraft movie or book, I should say, would hit hard.
yeah,
It'd be
that
pretty
would be
dope.
fun. It'd be fun.
So I was gonna ask you, it sounds like you seen one at least, but I was gonna ask you, have you seen other silent horror films?
Yeah, I mean this Nosferatu,
Okay.
and what else have I seen? I went on a kick like last year where I watched a couple of like silent horror films and can't remember what the other one was, but it
Okay.
was like the Cabinet and something else, I forget.
Okay.
But
Phantom
yes,
Carriage, maybe, or
Was it the
or
Phantom Carriage? It was something on Shutter. Shutter had like a bunch that they just dropped, and
The
like
Man Who
it was,
Laughs, something like that. But yeah, I mean, this it's great to hear that you've seen a lot of the a couple. At least you've seen the biggest ones now, the big three,
yeah,
right, of silent horror films. Because I think a lot of horror fans just don't take a chance on silent film. They think they it's not interesting or whatever, and it's like you just don't understand what you're missing if you haven't seen a silent horror. A silent film in general are great, but silent horror films particularly it's like a different feeling. I was talking last week about Night of the Living Dead, and we are talking about it being in black and white and what it does to you to watch a movie in black and white. It like makes you focus on other things than the color of what's happening. And with silent film, I think it's the same thing where it forces you to focus so much on a couple senses, and hearing is out there. I mean, there's music, right? Music is an
yeah.
aspect of it, but the majority of it is the image that you're seeing and the words that you're reading and all that. So I was so happy when you chose Haxan. This is going to drop this Friday, so it's going to be our first movie in October, so celebrating Halloween. Happy spooky season to you, by the way. So I'm so
You
excited
as
for
well.
that. So let's get into Haxan. I have a little bit background here on the movie, and then we'll get into it. So it was written and directed by Benjamin Christensen. He was born in Denmark to a wealthy family in 1879. He dropped out of medical school to receive training as an opera singer, only to lose his singing voice to what was diagnosed as an incurable nervous illness. He then had some success as an actor in the theater until his voice failed him there too, whereupon he left the stage to go into business. In 1912, he returned to acting, this time in the thriving Danish film industry, but soon became more interested in directing. So this movie is a Swedish production, but Christensen is Danish from Denmark. Yeah, that checks out. His first two films behind the camera were Sealed Orders from 1914 and Blind Justice from 1960. But nothing in there could prepare you for his breakout third film, which was Haxan. And so Haxan does star Maren Peterson as Haxan, or the witch, or literally the old woman being tortured. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it's pronounced, I've been saying it already wrong this whole time, but it's Hexen. It's pronounced Hexen.
Yeah.
And it literally means witch. So I hadn't known that either. But starring Maren Peterson, starring Clara, these names are a bit foreign to me. Claren Pontypidian, forgive me if I'm saying that incorrectly. I'm sure I am. She's a nun. Wilhelmine Henriksen as Apollon. Elith Pio as the young monk. And a lot of these people played multiple roles. Oscar Strabolt as the fat monk. That's the credit that it was given. Tora Teje as the modern hysteric, the kleptomaniac as well. John Anderson as the chief inquisitor. Karen Winther as Anna's sister. Astrid Holm as Anna, and the director himself and writer Benjamin Christensen as the devil, which is really cool to see. Because that devil, I mean, for Patreon, you can see my background is devil. It's one of the coolest pieces of imagery from film that I've ever seen, and it's over 100 years old, and it's so fucking
Yeah.
cool. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, they did a good job with that. And the tongue, like
Yeah.
the serpent tongue thing that he kept doing was pretty cool.
Yeah. I did also want to point out the cinematography of the movie, shot by Journey, Johan Anker's Journey, edited by Eddie Hansen, and the art direction and the set direction by Richard Loaf, which amazing. The set direction behind this was absolutely incredible. And then Al Matheson and Hagel Norrell were the art department assistants for that. So consisting partly of documentary style storytelling as well as dramatized narrative sequences, the film purports to chart the historical roots and superstitions surrounding witchcraft, beginning in the Middle Ages through the 20th century. It's based partly on his Christensen's own study of the Malleus Maleficarum, which is a 15th century German guide for inquisitors. Haxan proposes that such witch hunts may have stemmed from misunderstandings of mental sorry, or neurological disorders triggering mass hysteria. Have you read the Malleus Maleficarum?
I have not. No.
That's one of those books that I don't even know if it's been translated English. I don't know if we can, but it's one of those books that, especially like in Evil Dead and movies about um, possession, I feel like it's
Mhm.
always name dropped, but I've never actually read it or looked into seeing if it can be read. If it's, I'm sure it's been translated in English, but I just never looked into it. And I definitely want to look into it. Are you somebody who is superstitious or believes? Are you a believer?
No, I'm
Okay.
not. I don't believe in really any supernatural things. But like I'm always open to the possibility of like, hey, there could be something out there. But I am also one of those like I have to see it to be able to completely buy into it. So, but I'm not a complete doubter, but you know,
I
pretty
get
much am.
I get you. I get you. I mean, I'm an atheist. I'm kind of the same way, but I was wondering, like, how funny would it be if I just whipped out the Malleus Maleficarum right here, and just started reading
I
turns of it or parts of it to the audience. Basically,
had a
Evil Dead, this bitch.
I had a copy of the Goda. Do you know what that
No,
is?
I'm not familiar.
It's I think the name of the book is called like the Lesser Keys of Solomon, and it was a pretty popular book. I think like Aleister Crowley used to raise
Okay.
demons, and like you apparently there's spells in there that you can use to like raise demons and stuff. And uh I don't know where it is, and I'm fairly certain my wife, who's not really a believer, I think she like disposed of it when I wasn't looking because it kind of freaked her out that I had this book. So
I can see
um
that, but also it's kind of unnerving that you don't know where your copy is.
yeah, I think honestly what I really think happened is like we moved like three times in the past, 10 years. So it probably got lost in the shuffle of one of the moves because I lost a bunch of other books as well around the time we were moving. So I think that's just what happened. I like left a box somewhere. So somebody else has that book, maybe unbeknownst to themselves, and now they probably have demons running amok in their house.
Well, what's that book that's floating in the air right behind you? I
I
don't
don't know. Oh, that's just Rainbow Filth.
Oh yeah, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Nice, nice. All right, a little bit more about the background, then we'll get into the movie. So, as Christensen once explained to an interviewer, his goal was to throw light on the psychological causes of these witch trials by demonstrating their connections with certain abnormalities of the human psyche, abnormalities which have existed throughout history and still exist in our midst. In Christensen's view, the medieval and early modern women who were labeled witches and who suffered torture and death at the hands of men armed with the power of the church would, in his time and 100 years later, our time, have been diagnosed as hysterics. Christensen made the radical decision to present his research and his ideas on screen, not in one or two dramatized case studies, but as a cultural history lecture in moving pictures, mingling historical documents and reenactments. Now, what I find checking is that you were talking about how you decided to write Rainbow Filth in a kind of different way, and Christensen kind of did Haxan in a different way as well. You know, it's not a straight movie. It's like
Mm-mm.
they're saying it's a kind of a historical reenactments, and also it sometimes plays out like a PowerPoint presentation, especially
Yeah, it was
the first segment of it.
it's so weird the structure. Like it's almost like you get three different movies in one. You get like the PowerPoint presentation in the beginning, then you get like the second part is like a fever dream of like a bunch of different like little vignettes kind of mashed together.
Yeah,
And then the rest of them is like a little mixture of both. And then it like goes off in another direction where it becomes like he was like talking about how he was talking to one of his actresses and like she was telling it her experience, and then he starts talking about it becomes like very meta, and he's talking about his own experience with talking to the actress about like all this other different stuff that was going on, and like it was just like a very weird kind of like all over the place movie, but it kind of works too. Like it works very well.
yeah, because yeah, exactly. You said it's very meta, and it's before obviously hundreds of years before, 100 years before that term was anything, but
Yeah.
it is very meta because you don't know what is actually what's happening in the story versus what's something being told that happened in the story. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's small clues, but then it switches back and you don't know, wait, are we still in that story that's being told, or are we not? So it's a bit trippy. Like it's like I was saying, it connects to your book a little bit in that it's a bit fucking with your brain a little bit, you know?
Yeah, it feels like a fever dream at times, especially in that second part. I think that was probably my favorite part of the movie was part two, where it was just like those little vignettes were so cool and so visually stunning to look at. Especially for a movie that was, 100 years old. It was like, wow, like those stand up to like today's standards in terms of like atmosphere and just like creepiness. And I was also really impressed with, like, you said it before, no dialogue, and there is, I think, something to the senses, and like how take one of that away and it kind of strengthens all the other senses.
Mhm.
I was so impressed, like you didn't even need like the cue cards with like telling you like what the story was, because they presented it in such a visually storytelling like way that you kind of didn't even need the words on the screen to be able to absorb the story. And it's just like filmmaking at like its basic form, and I was just captivated by it.
That's a great point. That yes, I watched the Criterion Collection version, and it was remastered as of 2016, and they still had the old, I believe, Swedish interstitials, the words,
Yeah,
and then the bottom was the English subtitles. But I I almost feel like I didn't even need
yeah,
the subtitles, because they're that was their art form. Their art form was getting across the story through movements and imagery on the screen. So it was more like trans language. Just like it
yeah.
was transcending language, I should say. It was transcending language. Um, so in recent years, benefiting from successive restorations and wider distribution, Haxan has taken its place among the preeminent works of silent cinema, along the lines of The Cabin of Dr. Caligari and Nosferatu, like we talked about. And it was a horror film from a time when the category did not exist. Haxan is a contemporary with, but stands kind of as a notable precursor to the two movies we talked about, Caligari and Nosferatu, because that Caligari came out in 20 and Nosferatu came out in 22. So he invented in Haxan what has become known as the essay film. In an article he wrote while he was working on the film, he said, "I'd like to know at this time whether a film is able to hold the public's interest without mass effects, without sentimentality, without suspense, without heroes and heroines, in short, without all those things on which a good film is otherwise constructed. My film consists of a series of episodes that, as part of a mosaic, give expression to an idea." It's exactly what we were talking about. With Haxan, Christensen created a prototype of this possible cinema by alternating between documentary and reconstruction and repeatedly speaking directly to the audience through intertitles in the first person. And lastly, one of Haxan's master strokes is the way it places together, on the same level of cinematic depiction, fact and fiction, objective reality and hallucination. At times, Haxan appears to be a literal depiction of the imaginings of people in medieval Europe, which is the cinematic equivalent of the woodcuts of demons that illustrate the prologue. Christensen denies us cues indicating the points at which the film jumps from one level of reality to the other, like I was saying. So I don't know, what version did you see?
I watched it on Max, so I don't really
Okay.
know
Was
exactly.
there the intro that you had, was it by the director or was it by William Burroughs? Was there an intro at all?
It just kind of went right into the film, I think.
Okay,
I don't think
cool.
there was an intro at
So
all.
you probably saw then the remastered, like, 2016 version of it,
Maybe.
because here's the funny thing. So this movie, like Night of the Living Dead and Last Man on Earth, this is the third movie in about a month and a half that I've done that they failed to register the copyright correctly. And so they lost the
Uh,
copyright to it. And so everybody was able to have copies of this. And sometimes people were seeing copies of like third and fourth generation, and it was so warbled and messed up and shit like that.
Mm.
But so that's why it's been remastered a couple times. But the version I saw had an intro from Christensen, where it's about like a 9 minute long 9 minute long intro. Basically what it comes down to is he's saying that silent movies kind of give you the opportunity to express thoughtful dreams and fantasy better than the sound movies do, because he did this intro like in the 30s after the talkies had been invented and stuff like that.
Mm.
And then he said that there was basically four types of women burned at the stakes. There was what was known as a professional witch, which is a woman who was knowledgeable of quote unquote witchcraft, which basically just meant like plant-based knowledge. They would know what herbs to use if somebody has been injured, or that sort of thing, right? Second was a poor old woman. If they were physically disfigured or if they were beggars, like they would be burned at the stake just for that. And that they kind of go into that in the movie as well. There's the hysterical woman, which that's kind of easy to classify, quote unquote, I should say, hysterical woman, right? And then fourth is the average middle class woman of the Middle Ages. So really, it's like any woman was
Any
persecuted.
woman, yeah, that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, which I mean, I know it's been terrible to be a woman throughout history, but I mean, I would think in that time would probably be the worst time, because you
Yeah,
could literally just be accused of being a witch, and you were the witch. It's not like in other democracies where how it's supposed to work, is that you're innocent until proven guilty. Where in these movies and in the witch trials, you were guilty and you had to prove your innocence, or even they said you were guilty and you had to confess to your guilt, that sort of thing.
yeah,
So
not many options.
yeah, so let's get started talking about the movie. First off, that first segment, so there's 7 segments it's broken up into. And the first segment, I'm just going to go real quick off of Wikipedia. It says it's a scholarly dissertation on the appearances of demons and witches in primitive and medieval culture. The first segment of the film uses a number of photographs of statuary, paintings, and woodcuts as demonstrative pieces. In addition, several large-scale models are employed to demonstrate medieval concepts of the structure of the solar system and the commonly accepted depiction of hell. So I absolutely loved this first part because it starts off very singularly, or very very small, and then breaks out into the wider picture, and we get to the point where like we're at God and his choir of angel, quote
Yeah.
unquote God and his God. There's a lot of quotes in this but and we get to like the God and his like choir of angels sort of thing, and I just absolutely love that. What did you think of this first segment here?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I kind of like the imagery of like what hell is supposed to look like according to, old school Bible, where like, there's demons eating people and like dropping them in vats of fire, and like that whole segment was really cool. And it was a lot of like just showing pictures and then just, with the words, the documentary style of that age. But they did something cool. There was one part where it just looked like a picture, but it was like all moving, and like it was kind of like very hazy and you couldn't really see, but it looked
Yeah.
like there was just demons running around like just killing people and like doing nasty stuff. And definitely looked like a factory with a bunch of like OSHA incidents going on everywhere.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it was cool, man. I really liked it. I dug the information that you got. I was a little nervous because I didn't really do any research going in. I kind of went in blind, so I was like, I don't know if I can watch an hour and 50 minutes of just this. And then thankfully it kind of segued into part two. But yeah, it was a solid like just 15-20 minutes of just good background, good information about, um just like what witches were, why they were there, and um just like general background information that you need to know for the following segments.
It's like when you're in social studies class as a kid and
Yeah.
like your teacher's going over like a really great subject that you're really interested in. You're like, I could be like, I love school, like that sort of that time, and then you go to math class, and you're like, fuck, I hate school again. But like, that's what it felt for me anyway. I got a little personal there, but yeah, they have there's like a great drawing to start off. It's like of a witch, and then it says something like, when primitive man is confronted with something unexplainable, the explanation is always sorcery and evil spirits. And
Yes.
as somebody who grew up Catholic and went to Catholic school for 8 years and had it like ingrained in them, about God and all that, and who has now thankfully left all that behind them, I'm like, yes, I fucking love this. Like, it feels very much like this is up my alley sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like this great a Persian picture, and I don't know the veracity of these facts, right? I'm just going based off of what the movie is
Yeah.
saying and what we're seeing. Okay, so nothing in here should be taken as factual.
Right.
This is his research, quote unquote research that he's done, right? So,
Yeah.
but there's this great Persian picture depicting like these sort of anthropomorphized animals, and I swear to God that we see an image of Pazuzu. I don't know if you noticed that Pazuzu from The Exorcist.
Yeah.
I swear to God, it looked like him. I was like,
It
oh
did.
shit.
Yeah.
And then we get images of gods from other eras. And then they say like the Egyptians believed that the sky was held up by mountains. And then they actually have a pointer, like you were in class, a pointer like pointing on the chalkboard,
Yes.
things that they
Yeah. It
want
was
you
like a
to.
little like pen or something.
Yeah, I've never seen that in another movie before, and absolutely loved it. Let me see here. So they say in this part is like evil spirits roamed and tempted children, like you were saying, they lived in the depths of the earth. And it was so funny, the depiction of Earth as I believe it was the Egyptians saw it, was very much sounding like flat earthers, like right now, like it was encased in uh Earth. I don't know. It's obviously a flat area, and it was just amazing. And then all the god or the god keeps like the spheres revolving. Oh, at one point it actually shows like there's mechanical representation, like you were saying, but it was tinted red. And I was wondering, I was going to ask you, in your version, do you remember if it was tinted red or not? Because I was wondering
um
if so, like, did they have red film back then, or is that something that was added after the fact?
I the I did notice the coloring was kind of all over the place. There was like
Okay.
somewhere it was like blue, and then somewhere it was like just sepia toned type,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what it was through most of it. It was kind of like that sepia, like because it's like a brownish red type of film grain to it.
Okay. Okay. But there was one part where they were showing a picture of a drawing of a witch milking an axe handle, which is so
Yeah.
cool. Like, obviously, you can't milk an axe handle, so if she's doing that, she must be a witch, sort of thing. And then she's also casting spells on men's shoes, and I'm like, I'd burn her too. Leave my shoes out of this. And then I was cracking up because they're showing purportedly images of witches, right? And one
Mhm.
image was literally three women at a table, and they were like, "Look at this coven." It's like, what?
Yeah.
It's just three women at a table. What are we
They're
doing
just
here?
having tea.
Yeah. And then also, like, they say after a witch's Sabbath, they'll go to a barn and fuck with a cow or something like that. And there's an image
Mm,
of a cow, but the cow just looks like he's just bored. That's all. Like,
yeah.
nothing's happened to him. His eyes are just looking like he's bored. But the witch's Sabbath looked dope as fuck. Like, I'm like, it's just like a dancing with your friends, naked dancing with your friends.
Yeah.
It's not,
And then you got to kiss the butt. A
and
lot
then
of butt kissing. Yeah. A lot of
you
butt
got to
kissing
kiss the
happening.
devil's butt. That was the price to get in. And I'm fine with that. I mean, like,
Yeah, I guess.
women are free. Dudes got to pay at the door, $20, or you kiss the devil's butt. It's fine.
He probably keeps that butt pretty clean too, so it's
I
probably
mean,
not a big
yeah.
deal.
If everybody's, I mean, when you go to church, right? At least in Catholic church, I don't know how other churches do it. When you go to get the communion, you got to put your lips onto that cup that everybody's been
Mm,
drinking of. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
yeah. I wonder if they still do that now, like in a post-COVID world. Probably not.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's been a very long time since I've stepped foot in church.
Same. Same.
But then this is where there's a point that I had never heard about, like the witches' lore, and that's witch ointment. Were you familiar with witch ointment?
I wasn't, but I was kind of fascinated by that too. Like,
Yeah. Do you want to
um,
tell the audience what witch ointment was?
it was just like they just put it on. I don't even remember exactly what they were using it for,
But
but like they would just like put it on certain things to like
yeah, that's what
make.
allowed them to fly. Basically, the
Okay,
witch's
yeah,
ointment is what allowed them to fly, and so and then they would just use like brooms. And another thing I'd never heard of, although I'd seen this movie, it's been like 8 years now, but I saw it at the Alamo Draft House here in Austin, and they had a live accompanied by a industrial metal band, which
oh
is
yeah,
fucking amazing.
that's
Uh,
cool.
but I had forgotten a lot about it. But they didn't only ride broomsticks; they also rode like goats and pigs. Well, how come we never see a witch riding a pig or a goat? That's great.
Much more interesting than a
Much
broom.
more interesting. Yeah. Then we see images of them like desecrating the cross, like standing on it, all that sort of shit.
Mm.
And you get a devil name. I mean, and food. They said there was a banquet. So it's like this just sounds like a fucking fun ass party. I went to Satan Con earlier this year, and it sounded like a lot of shit that I saw at Satan Con.
Where's that?
Satan Con was in it was held in Boston this year.
Oh, okay.
And they move it around every year. Last year, I think it was in Arizona, and really they
Okay.
just troll people. So if there's a city, for example, in Boston, like the mayor was like, they were not going to allow them to invoke a prayer at city council, which you're supposed to be allowed to. Any religion is supposed to be able to invoke a prayer,
Yeah.
and they were denied. And so they're like, this is the Satanic Temple is like, okay, we're gonna have Satan Con here, and so they had Satan Con there. So this is just a big troll, which I
Yeah,
absolutely love. So
that's
so
funny.
that was kind of that was part one. Part two, the second segment of the film is a series of vignettes that theatrically demonstrate medieval superstition and beliefs concerning witchcraft, including Satan tempting a sleeping woman, um, terrorizing a group of monks. It also shows a woman purchasing a love potion,
Hmm.
and then also a supposed witch named Apollon waking up, being with Satan, and then the coins and all that sort of stuff. So that's
Oh
part
man, the
two.
coins was so weird. And like I was really impressed with some of the shots that they were getting, like how they were making it disappear like out the door.
Yeah,
That like one shot, I was like, how did they do that back then? Like I was trying to like wrap my brain around how like I guess they shot it and played it backward. I don't know.
yeah. It
I
was to me it looks like reverse, and like to us to modern audiences, it's like, oh yeah, we've seen this 1,000 times before, but this is 1922.
That's what I mean. It was like
They're
hard for me to
making these
wrap my
shots.
brain around like how they did it because like
Yeah,
it didn't look like they played the film backward because
her
the
hand
way
was
the door
there.
was
Oh,
closing.
the
Yeah,
door
and
was
her
moving.
hands were there too. Yeah, like
Yeah.
her hands were also there. I don't know. I don't. It was just it kind of blew my mind. I was like, wow.
It's discombobulating. Like your
Yeah,
brain is like, what the fuck is, because you're not expecting this shot in a movie from 1922.
yeah.
You're expecting it like this cheesy shot from the 60s, maybe a movie from that sort of thing. But here it works really well. But the beginning of part two, we see it's 1488, and there's these men that are bringing straw into a hut. But when they're bringing them to these women, and a woman opens up the straw, and actually it's human body parts inside.
Hmm.
And then the witch, she's a witch, says, "Oh, this man was laying too long at the gallows or something like that," and she literally snaps a finger off of the hand, and it looked fucking great. It
Yeah,
looked like, for practical effects for right now in 2023. I don't know how they did that. It looked
yeah,
really fucking good.
yeah. A lot of the stuff on here looked great.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So they were just like harvesting, I guess, dead people from the gallows. They were just kind of taking them and using them for their witchcraft.
For the spells, right?
Yeah.
Well, eye of newts, all that sort of stuff. Because she ends up like dropping the finger in a wine barrel, and then she starts making a potion, and there's literally like frogs and snakes. It's a
Hmm.
witch's brew, and you gotta wonder, like, Christensen did all the research for this. I wonder if this had been portrayed before, or if all of our depictions of witches, like from there forth, comes from Christensen's depiction of witches making all these, witches brews and stuff like that, using these sorts of ingredients in their potions.
Very well could be. I mean, I feel like the like witches have always had like that kind of imagery going back to like, grim fairy tales, stuff like that. So,
Oh yeah, that's
um,
true. Yeah, Grimm's fairy tales, was that like 17th century or 18th century?
I
I'm
think
not
so.
familiar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
it's 17th. But yeah, so I think it's always been there. But I mean, he probably did the research going back. Obviously, it was like the medieval days. So he's probably just pulled a bunch of texts, I assume. I don't know. I didn't see anything on his process, but I'm
Yeah.
sure he pulled some stuff from some people.
So one thing I didn't mention is obviously the misogyny that's on display in the movie, and I
Mm.
think Christensen, and I've read articles from feminists, purported feminists anyway, or who have said that Christensen did a relatively good job kind of pointing out the misogyny that comes inherent in like the persecution of women, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so like that's underlying this whole movie and kind of underlying this whole episode. So it is definitely there, although I don't think that myself or Tim are the ones to kind of go into a lot of depth into the misogynistic parts of the movie, or I should say kind of uh talk in depth about it, is like as far as like what how it affects us or anything like that. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm not really going into that, but I understand that it's there and it needs to be a bigger part of the conversation. So like if you once you guys hear this, if you want, I do have a Discord. So if you guys want to jump in there and like talk about it there, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on it. So back to the movie. There's that one witch. She comes in, and I'm not sure if she's a witch. She might just be a customer. She comes in and asks for a love potion over
Mm-hmm.
this pious man, this monk.
The monk,
And,
yeah.
yeah, and the witch gives her a potion of like cat feces and dove hearts. I was like, ugh.
Ugh.
Yeah, and
But it works,
then
I guess. It worked though, right? He was like jumping around going nuts after he had that.
well, that first one, it was kind of weak, but it softened his heart. He just kind of like smiled at her and like chubbied her cheeks a little bit, that sort of thing. But that wasn't enough, so she wanted a stronger potion. So she gets a stronger portion, and this monk is like the nastiest eater. Well, there's
Yeah.
one person later in the movie, but this monk is like he's got the food all over his mouth, and he's like chewing with his mouth open. He's just grabbing handfuls of meat, and this is the man she wants.
I mean, that's how they got down back then. That's like how they ate, and they didn't care.
Yeah, they didn't care. Just like wiping his hands on his monk's robe and all that.
Did you ever go to like a medieval times like dinner
I went once.
place?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they don't give you like any napkins or anything. You just have to wipe it like wherever. So it's
I hated it. I didn't like that part. Didn't like that part. I like the action and all that, but it's like,
yeah, yeah.
so she gives him the stronger potion, and she puts it into his drink, and immediately he's at 12. He's at
Yeah.
attention. And he's like horny as fuck, and he's chasing her around the table, and then off they go in the woods, and he catches her. And but then it goes back to her. So she was thinking that again, we didn't
Mhm.
know what was happening, what wasn't really happening. And then she tries to pay for it. She says, "First, smell my ointment." And then she says, "The monk will love this, and then you can use it to fly and meet the other witches." So she's trying to recruit her using the witch's ointment to try to get her to turn into a witch. So this is the first vignette. The next scene, we see two men carrying a dead body inside, and we're not sure what they're going to do with it, but they pray over it, and they're doctors, or at least whatever was a doctor in the medieval ages, right? We don't know what it is that we're called, but they're basically trying to advance the practice of medicine, but the only way they can do that is by working on cadavers, basically.
Yeah.
And so they're
Yeah, they were
ghouls.
like yeah, they were like praying, right, for forgiveness, and but they were like, ah, it's in the name of medical
Of
science.
science. Yeah. So then Oh wait, I wonder when was Frankenstein written? No, it was the late 19th century. Anyway,
Yeah.
and so then a woman sees what they're doing and like yells. She runs out of the house and yells for the whole like town to hear. And then we could assume that the town comes out of their houses, and we could assume that those guys were dispatched with pretty quickly, right?
Mhm.
Because they don't take kindly to grave robbing in this
Yeah.
small town. And that's a very short vignette. It's like 2 minutes or 5 minutes, not very long at all.
Right.
Okay. In another scene, we see an old drunk man kicks an old, possibly unhoused woman and tells her to get the fuck out. And she curses him. And she says, you're cursed with an open mouth for eternity. And then he
Oh
can't close his
yeah.
mouth. I couldn't tell. I was trying to tell whether or not that was what's her name? The old lady who shoot. Maren Peterson, who plays the witch, the old woman being tortured, because later on when she's being tortured, she just starts naming names, and one of them I thought was that old man who kicked her. So, but then it actually shows her cursing him, which the curse worked. So was she actually, you know, I don't know what the hell is
Yeah.
happening there. Um, so then Christensen also was the narrator in the movie as well, and he says that, wait a minute, who was the narrator? Was he? No, it wasn't the narrator. He was. It was the words. I was reading it in
Yeah.
my mind. I heard his voice.
I know what you meant. I knew what you
Yeah.
meant.
But they say that people believed in the devil so much that they manifested him. Again, I think that's so prescient that now,
Hmm.
that you want to believe in the evil so much that you see the evil everywhere you look, right?
Right.
So then, in one of the like more iconic scenes, and this movie to me is filled with iconic images, the devil popping out from behind the desk of the monk. So the monk is like writing in his Bible or
Yeah.
whatever, and the devil just pops up out of there. I think it's yeah, I think it's that image.
Yeah. I think it is.
Um,
Yep.
it's so fucking cool. Looks so great. What did you think when you saw that?
Yeah, it was kind of shocking, like how cool and how good it looked on camera, even though you know it's just like probably a rubber suit or something, but it still looked cool on camera. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's the like that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoyed about this was which was the imagery and like the dreamlike quality. And I think if I recall correctly, he like the monk runs away and like tries to get like one of his monk friends to look at it, and like he can see it. So
yeah,
like it was just one of those like mind fuck type things that happens throughout the movie. And yeah, I like that. I also like the scene too, which was I believe was in the same part where he appears like next to the girl's bed while the husband is sleeping, and like
yeah,
he just kind of like holds his hand type thing. And like you kind of get the idea like she's like cheating on her husband with Satan type of
yeah.
thing.
He's seducing
um
her. Yeah,
yeah. So I don't know, I like that. I like I said, I like devil imagery. Even though I don't believe in it, I think it's just fun imagery to have, you know.
yeah. Exactly. I completely understand what you're saying because I'm the same way. Yeah. So then later in the scene, we see that this woman, I believe it's pronounced Apollon, is
Apollon,
summoned
yeah.
by the devil, who's like in the movie's churning butter, but I think it's representing something else. Like he's
Uh-huh.
literally, it looks like he's masturbating furiously with his tongue out. And then it's like cool shots of them superimposed on the film as they appear to like fly up. And this is when she wakes up. She's covered in coins. The devil we see again. Sorry. Again, we see the devil with his tongue out. And I think it's like have you ever seen those like cute puppies who have that disorder that their tongue is always out?
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of this devil because like every time we see him, his fucking tongue is out of his mouth.
Yeah, it is like you said, it's a cool image. It kind of reminds me of I mean there's a few really good like practical effects like devil makeup looking, like Legend. Did you ever see Legend?
Yes, I just saw that within the last month.
Like Tim
Tim
Curry's.
Curry. Yeah.
Yeah, that he looks awesome. And then like I don't know, for some reason when I was watching this, especially with the tongue thing, Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny,
Okay. Yeah. 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 I see that.
when Dave Grohl plays Satan, kind of like the same exact type of imagery. So yeah, I loved it. I loved the look of it.
Yeah. And this is where we see the coins.
Mm.
They're like they fall from the sky or whatever. The old woman wakes up and she's ecstatic, right? Because she's probably poor. She needs the money. And then all of a sudden they start reversing out. We see those cool shots that you were talking about, and then they're gone. And then we get this great shot of like this goat demon breaking through a door. It's
Mm.
like shoot, what's that called? Um how was the Nightmare Before Christmas shot? What is that process called?
Like stop motion.
Stop
Is that
motion, yes,
okay?
exactly. It's a stop motion of like this goat demon breaking through this door, and you're like, oh shit, like it looks fucking great. I was just so surprised by it. This movie is so charming. That's what it is. Like with practical effects and in camera work that they had to do, you could tell like the love and all the hard work that went into it, and it's so charming for me. It's like, how could you not? Well, for me personally, right? I'm not going to influence your score or whatever, but like for me personally, how could I not love this? I
Yeah.
absolutely fucking love it. So
And the set pieces too. Like I was curious, and I didn't really do a lot of research for it. But like I was curious to see like where like did they shoot this on location? Did they shoot it in like a studio? Because like the set pieces were amazing. Like I felt like I was there.
yeah, it was shot. Majority of it was shot in studio, but the director
Which
wanted to
blows my
shoot.
mind.
Yeah, he wanted to shoot at night though. So even though they didn't film, like they weren't outside filming, they were inside, which and they had all the lighting and all that. But the director felt that people showing up to set at night, like you're kind of feeling already spooked out a little bit about
Hmm.
not having a lot of lights outside and all that sort of stuff. So that's what he wanted to transfer over to the making of the film. So he shot majority of it at night.
Cool.
Um, so we see women dancing again. They're dancing with pigs. And then I'm not quite sure if she was hallucinating at this point, but it doesn't really matter because I feel like I'm hallucinating. And then she
Yeah.
she wakes up, and that's the end of that. It's just like just small
What
segments, small vignettes.
what's your interpretation of the coins? Because to me, like the coins, this was like my favorite part of the movie because I felt like there was something going on, like some sort of message maybe that the director was trying to like portray. And
Mm.
like I have a theory, but I kind of want to hear what you thought of like the coins and like what was actually the message going on in that
Yeah, I love
segment.
that. Yeah, I do want to hear your theory. For me, I think it's sort of like dance with the devil and you're gonna get burned sort of thing. Like you thought you were
Okay.
gonna get all this money, and then the devil puts it out in front of you, and then you go for it and you find out that it was like it wasn't there, it was all a lie to begin with, sort of thing.
Okay.
So that's what I interpreted from it. What did you interpret?
I kind of thought it like along the same lines. I thought it was like I thought that and like the party scene that she gets like uninvited to like later, like they correlated somehow. I thought maybe it was like the temptation of having those coins there. It was almost like you grew up obviously in Catholicism, so like you're familiar with like the idea of like the temptation of the devil and like him presenting stuff to you. And then but God does kind of the same thing. Like he tempts you with all these things you shouldn't do. And then like you want to do them, like, they're because they're awesome.
Yeah.
And like if you do it, you get punished for it. So I thought it was kind of like a parallel for that. Like she was giving him he was giving her all these coins to make her rich. And the fact that she took them and piled them on that table or whatever means like she didn't get to go to like the paradisial party that they were having, which also looked
Okay.
really cool. Like I don't know, that's what I thought. It was kind of like a parallel to like the god and devil and how they're kind of like similar in a lot
Right.
of ways.
Yeah.
Um, which is always kind of I grew up Catholic too, and it was kind of like one of the things that was one of many things that it's like you start to question as you really start to deep dive the religion. It's like, the God and the devil, they're not that much different when you break it all down.
Yeah.
So it's like I thought it was had something to do with that. So I was just curious and see if that like tracked.
All right. So the next part was it's part three. It's about like Inquisition, the judges, and
Mm.
like witch trials. It's set in the Middle Ages. This narrative is used to demonstrate the treatment of suspected witches by the religious authorities of the time. Basically, it's about a printer named Jesper who dies in bed, and his family accuses an old woman, Maria the Weaver, of causing the death through witchcraft, and then it just goes downhill from there. So, but first, they show an accused woman tied up. A woman being accused of being a witch is tied up and thrown in the river. And if she floats, she's taken out of the water and hung or burned. And if she sinks, they thank God for her innocence. It's like, I know I've heard this before, and I've heard of like the dunking as well, sort of thing, but it's still so fucking like the make it make sense. Make it make sense.
Yeah,
How the fuck does that make sense to you?
it's just like the hypocrisy of like religious hypocrisy. I think it's been that way throughout all of history. So why would this be any different? So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we've all heard those stories, like Salem witch. Have you ever been to Salem?
Yeah. So for Satan Con, which was held in Boston, my wife and I took the whole week off and we vacationed and we did half our time in no, more of our time in sometime in Boston for Satan Con, the rest of the time in Salem. Salem was amazing. So
Yeah,
much fucking
Salem's
fun.
great, dude. I would love to. We did it like right before our son was born. We did like a vacation up the East Coast, and we stopped in Salem for like a day. And I feel like a day wasn't enough to like do everything, but I do remember like they had like a lot of touristy walkthroughs and little performances that you can go, and one of them was like all about like the witch trials, and they would they had like banners and like art of like all the different things that they used to do to the witches. And so like I'm familiar with that concept, like, oh yeah, you're gonna die either way if you're accused. So it's like just the accusation is like a death sentence in and of itself. So
Yeah,
it's just a terrible.
was it the witch dungeon? Was there like a
I think
historical reenactment on stage?
yeah, it was kind of like, yeah, it was a historical reenactment, and
Yeah.
they had like it was almost like, yeah, like a documentary or just like a, I don't know, an oral history of like what happened, and then they kind of acted it out on the stage. And
Yeah, I went to that. That was so much fun. And then later on, they took us down. After that, they took us down into the dungeon and they
yeah,
showed you how small the cells were. And like it would be, I don't know, let's say 3 by 3 feet, and like 80 people would be in it. And you're like, holy
yeah.
fuck, like that's sounds terrible. Yeah, I can't express enough how cool Salem is. And I'm sure if you live there, you're like, oh, fuck that. I've been here forever. But like as a visitor, it's so fucking cool.
Yeah, I want to go back. It was a cool place, and the area is like really nice too, just to hang
Yeah,
out. And
for sure. So back to the movie. The a man. So we said that that man falls ill. He's a printer, and his wife says a witch cursed him. But they do it in a weird way. Like, some man comes, and I've never seen this before. He like melts silver, and then makes the sign of the cross over the dead man, and then throws the silver into water, which it cools it off really quickly, and then he pulls it out of water and it's fully hardened now, and he quote unquote reads it like if you were reading like bones, like chicken bones or something like that. I've
mm,
never seen that before. Have you ever seen that?
never.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it's all bullshit anyway, but of course he
Yeah,
says, oh yeah, it's right here, he's definitely been cursed. And so she's like, what the fuck? Okay, of course somebody cursed him. The first person who stumbles across her doors is beggar woman, played by Maren Peterson. She's just called Haxan, or the witch, the old woman being tortured. That's her. And she's basically there to beg for food. And the old woman, the wife, gives her food. And again, she eats it like with no spoon, just like taking it to the face, right?
yeah.
And while that's happening, the wife goes and gets the authorities, they come and they they arrest her. Basically, they throw her into like this cage on wheels, and that's the end of part 3. Real quick, they do show these the monks. You know how they shave the top of their head.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
know why what that? I wanted to look it up, but I ran
I
out of
I
time. Do you
meant
know
to
why
look it
that?
up too. I was like, why is he shaving his head? But like I've seen monks, I've seen that imagery
Like a
before.
friar tuck sort of thing.
Yeah, and I just I don't know. Like I guess like I always assumed that that was just the way they hit that individual's hair was. But then that I was looking at them, I'm like, oh, they're all like cut like that. And then when they actually showed the person like shaving the head, I was like, oh, it's on purpose. I was like, this is the way my brain works. I was like waiting for her to just dig that scalpel like right into the cranium and just like slicing him right open. And I'm like,
Yeah,
all right, it's not that kind of movie. Calm
it's
down.
it was a very like Salvador Dali image that you're talking about, like
Yeah.
Un Chen Andalu, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so that was the end of part 3. So part 4 is just a continuation of the story. I think 3 through 5 are kind of the same story. Um,
Yeah.
and this part is really sad for me. It's just the poor old lady who's been accused of being a witch, and she's just being tortured, and she's like
Mm-hmm.
crying, and it's really good. And like she has such a great face, like it has so much character, right? And you could see the torture on her face. They don't even necessarily show the torture. She's just crying and like moaning and stuff like that. It's very extremely effective, and like you were saying, didn't need any words.
Right.
It was translated through the language of the art of the image, I should say. So what would you think of this segment here? What was happening?
Yeah, I think like what you said, I mean, that was one of the things that impressed me a lot about the movie was the acting in it and like how expressive they were with just their facial features. And like you said, I mean, she did a phenomenal job portraying that agony that she was going through. But yeah, I didn't love this segment. Like I said, I kind of was like, this was kind of a part in the movie where I wasn't like checking out, but I was kind of like, okay, this is kind of getting to be a little bit repetitive, and I wasn't like completely into the story that they were going. So not my favorite part, but it was still cool. And I like I said, the acting in it was just
Okay,
off the charts good.
yeah, I can see that. But in certain segments of it, they play good cop, bad cop sort of thing. And they're trying to get her to confess. One guy's
Yeah.
like, oh, it's okay. The other one's like grabbing her by the shirt and like confess, confess. And then her feet are locked up and they're in a vice. And she says, "How learned men? How do you expect me to confess to something which is not true?" Again, great acting. And then all of a sudden, the more they start to turn the screw, great story by the way, turn of the screw. The more they turn it, and then they're like, okay, release the pressure a little bit so she knows how much it's hurting. As soon as that happens, she confesses to everything. She confesses to literally giving birth to the children of the devil. And then she starts naming a woman and that woman's coven that helped her deliver these babies. The satanic child or children that she's giving birth to look amazing. It's like
Was
probably,
that the one where
good.
like they look like little reptiles like coming out
Yeah, like
of
you could
her?
tell it's like paper mache
Yeah.
sort of thing, but they look so good.
Some
Just
some some of the stuff in here like kind of like where it falls exactly into the movie is kind of like all over the place for me because
well,
like I
it's
said, it
just
was kind of like a fever dream type of thing.
exactly, yeah,
But yeah, I do remember that part. And yeah, that was pretty cool, like how they did that. And they don't show a lot of it. Like it's just like quick, and then I think if I remember correctly, it just kind of like fades out or
yeah.
fades to black.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, it's just like a real quick segment of that. And she confesses to having witch powder on her and like flying to meet other witches at a Sabbath. Then she says the devil's grandmother was there, which the concept of the devil's grandmother I had never thought of, which is pretty fucking funny.
Yeah.
And then there's actually a great scene. It's a reenactment of the images that they were depicting earlier in the film, where like um, somebody was putting witch's powder on a witch's back so they could fly, and
Hmm.
other witches or demons were dropping witches into vats of burning boiling liquid. That was an image we saw earlier, and they were just recreating it, which I thought was really great. um and then of course the devil's naked again, and he's beating on women who hadn't sinned enough, right? So many great scenes. Like this whole it's impossible. This movie is kind of very difficult to describe, right? Because
Yeah.
it's all based on imagery, so you need to see this movie. But we see a black mass again. They're jumping on crosses, eating toads and dead babies. Like, I cannot believe that they went there, that they actually showed
Hmm.
dead babies, and they're like oozing right before they were about to drop them into the pot of boiling water. Amazing. Um, and then I'm just like, this looks so fucking cool. The set design is amazing. Again, we see the devil churning butter. And then she confesses to seeing the women kiss the devils behind. And then this is where she accuses the mother of the woman who accused her, and then she
Hmm.
also accuses the woman who accused her. They say that they were passionately making out with the devil. And then also the servant, she accuses the servant. So now she's basically blaming anybody who's wronged her. And they're
Yeah.
like, you can get it, you can get it, you can get it, fuck you,
Take me all
fuck you,
down.
fuck you. At one point, she talks about them watering somebody's front door. I'm like, watering somebody's front door, and then they show it, and these two women are peeing on the person's front on their
Yeah.
stoop. I was like, oh, that's what watering the front door means. And apparently, that person died that same night. And of course, the authorities are eating this shit up. They're just writing it down, like, oh yeah, yeah, we're gonna grab all these people. So that's the end of that segment. Part 5, it basically says, well, this is how it goes. How do you expect it to go if the only way these people don't die is they have to confess to it and give up other people's names? Of course, more people are going to start to be named, and so it's just an endless cycle. One
Hmm.
witch names 10 people, the next witch names another 10 people, and another 10 people, and they would just go around and like um clearing out whole villages, you know. I
Yeah.
know later on he says how many people died to it, and I think there was a slight exaggeration, but
Like 8 million, I think he said, or something,
yeah,
right?
so he says over hundreds of years, 8 million people were burned as witches. The historical records suggest the number of those executed for witchcraft between 1400 and 1850 was more likely around 8,000. So it's an exaggeration, right? But people still
Yeah.
were dying. Then we see this monk who earlier in the film was touched by a pretty woman. And just the fact of the woman touching him has bedeviled him. And now he can't think anything. He can't stop thinking about her. He's having dirty, impure thoughts. He tells his brother at the not at the monastery or whatever, and they start flagellating him, but that doesn't help. He still cannot get his mind off of her. And he even says like, "Oh, why'd you stop? I'm surely gonna be, cursed by God or something like that." I'm like, "Oh, he wanted him to keep going. It was kind of kinky." Um, so then they go to tell on the woman, and he's like, "This woman grabbed him, and she had the audacity to grab him, and that was all. That was all it took. She touched his hand. He got horny, and she's a witch. Like, that's how easy it was, you know."
Crazy.
So they grab her and they torture her, and she's in the torture chamber, and they're like, "We'll let you go. Listen, we've told all the security guards to leave. You can leave. You just need to tell us how to make thunder with this water." And I didn't quite understand that, but maybe that was a thing that witches did. And she was like, well, she didn't know how to do it because she's not a witch. But then they bring a baby in. One of the babies, it's actually the printer's baby. She's the only people left alive. And that whole family was a printer, and the printer's baby and her. And basically, they're saying they're going to kill the baby. So she tries not to, or she doesn't want them to kill her. So what she ends up doing is making something up. She's like, "Oh, I heard that somebody once told me that this is how you make thunder from water." And as soon as she starts talking, the head monk pops his head out and says, "Ah, I got you, bitch." And then that's it. Now she's a witch. And one of the monk who's kind of in love with her was like, "No, don't you see? Like, she's crying." And he's like, don't you
Yeah.
see? It's not tears, it's spittle. And it's like, she can't win
Yes.
here.
Right.
Earlier in the film, they asked her to cry. And if you can't cry, you're a witch. She's crying here. And they're like, oh no, it's spit. She put spit on her eyes. There's
Yeah.
literally no way. These guys are murderers and they wanted to murder this woman.
Right. Exactly. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
They can't win no matter what.
And so on and on this goes until the judges, condemn everybody that's been accused. They move on to another town. And then the plague spreads with them. So that's the end of part 5. Part 6, real quick, there's part 6 and 7. These are the final segments of the film. They seek to demonstrate how the superstitions of old have become better understood. The
Mm.
director offers the threat of medieval torture methods as an explanation for why many supposed heretics confessed to being involved in witchcraft. Though he does not deny the existence of the devil, Christensen claims that those accused of witchcraft may have been suffering from what are recognized in modern times as mental or neurological disorders. So I really liked this segment. Was a bit like the first segment, whereas the first segment was just informational and images of pictures. This one was just images of torture devices. But I love this shit. I
Yeah, I
absolutely
like this too. This was another cool part of it. Especially like this is where he kind of breaks like the fourth wall, I guess, and starts like talking about like the cast and the crew and like their experiences too, because he gives like the thumb screw to like one of the actresses, and like it there's like the footage of her like tightening it down on her because she wanted to see like how it would feel and stuff. So yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting with all this, the
Yeah, I
torture
love that part.
devices.
And also he's talking about, earlier in the film when our main witch, the old woman, was being tortured while he was actually filming the movie. The actress Maren Peterson, in the process of like quote unquote acting as she was being tortured, told him that that the devil is real and that
Yeah.
she knows somebody who had seen the devil. And so he takes that anecdote and puts it into the movie,
All
breaking
right.
that fourth wall, like you were saying. So
Yeah.
it's
Did she have
like,
like a book or something? Like
yeah,
a book or something that she gave him, and like he showed that also in the movie.
yeah, he did. So then we look at the tools of torture. There's like foot choppers, hand breakers, like leg vices with shims in them.
Mm.
This one man is tied to the rack and he's being drawn. There's collars with spikes in them. There's that
Yeah,
thumb
the
screw.
spike collar was weird.
Yeah, do you remember like how it worked? Do you remember how they said how it worked?
I don't remember the specifics, but like they don't show it, but like they kind of show it, I think, in just like what the actual item looks like and how it like went on. But
Yeah,
I don't remember exactly what they explained it, like how it like got you.
yeah. They showed a picture of it where it was a spiked collar, and then it was connected to it were 4 ropes, and then underneath the man they put a some sort of they lit a fire under him, which
Mm,
it's funny, you hear a lot of like the terms that we use today, like lighting a fire under somebody. That's
yeah,
literally torture. They would light a fire under him, and then he would squirm, and the process of squirming would cause the ropes to be pulled, and so he would kill himself by choking himself with these spike collars. That the person would. It would probably women as well. Men and women were killed this way. But it's just absolutely terrifying, like absolutely terrifying.
crazy.
Then they show a scene of like this nun being seized by insanity, and then the whole convent is kind of inflicted by this same insanity, or
Yeah, that
hysteria,
was
as is said in the movie. And basically, the devil comes to her in her dream, gives her a knife, and she tries to fight it, but he beats her down, and she says, "Get thee behind me, Satan!" But he forces her to do it anyway. And then she grabs a vanilla wafer. I forget what they're called. The Eucharist. There it goes.
Eucharist. Yeah,
Eucharist, and
same thing.
stabs it with the knife. And then this causes all the other nuns to go into like hysterics.
Yeah,
Uh, I was joking. I remember it was a Eucharist. I just wanted to say vanilla wafer. And then he says that, reading from the diaries of of the women, you could see that they were said that the devil forced them to do it. And then she grabs the baby Jeebus and she goes to the monks and asks to be burned at the stake. So that's the end of 6. So now we're on to the last segment here, and they say that being disfigured was, at this point, being disfigured was enough to get a woman burned at the stake. Like just being ugly, just having some sort of disfigurement or a hump or something like that. Like it's like that scene from Parks and Rec. Get a ticket, go to jail. Do this, go to jail. Like this is basically that. Like if you're a woman and you weren't pleasing to the eye of a man, then you are going to be burned at the stake, sort of thing. Slight exaggeration, but not by much.
Yeah.
Um, and
Mm.
then this is where they show that prayer book of the woman who claims to know the devil. And then they show he's trying to draw a connection between what was happening in medieval time and what's happening at his current time. And for example, they show a woman who was like a firebug, basically like a pyromaniac, right? And she had
Hmm.
this compulsion to strike matches. And he was saying, couldn't this be like the compulsion of the nun who had to walk in the middle of the night and stab that communion wafer, right? It
Yeah.
could be the same compulsion or similar compulsion. Then there was lustful dreams, which is that woman who was dreaming that the devil came to her at night and wanted her to have sex with him. This day and age, it wasn't the devil; it was like actors and famous men, like that would women would have lustful dreams of, right? And then there was these marks on women's bodies that were insensitive to touch, and it was said that the
Yeah, they were
devil,
stabbing him with that
right, when we would
tool.
grab them, they would stab them, and you would, if you weren't didn't feel it, then you were a witch. But
Yeah.
actually, I don't know the veracity of this claim, but it's supposed to be a part of hysteria. Yes or no, I don't know. Right. And then the last one is like kleptomania. This woman is she's a kleptomaniac, and she steals um jewels or a ring from this jeweler, and then
Hmm.
she gets caught, and the jeweler takes her back to the back of the store and is like going to call her parents, and she's like, please don't. If you do, they're going to put me into an insane asylum. And so he takes pity on her, which I thought was a bit of a moving scene.
Mm.
um but this is where she says like she's a broken woman, sort of thing. So it's like it's a mental disorder, which I thought is very kind of ahead of his time.
Yeah, I thought so too.
um, yeah, especially for 1922. I mean, some people nowadays have similar ideas to what is going on around this time, and so I thought it was really progressive of Christensen to be showing this and making this claim. So, what did you think?
Yeah, same. I thought it was definitely ahead of its time. Although I don't really have, not like a historian or anything, so I don't really have like an accurate firsthand experience of the times.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it did seem like mental health was virtually non. I feel like mental health in general still has like a long ways to go, right, for getting people treatment and help. And I don't think we're there yet as a society. So just imagine what it was like, 100 years ago when it wasn't even on the radar. They would just throw people in insane asylums and stuff and not even attempt to like get these people help. So yeah, I thought it was interesting that he like brought that up, and that was kind of like the whole point of the documentary part of the movie. And it was really like the tale of like three different movies. It was like, you had the documentary part, then you had like where you're supposedly getting facts like in the first part, then you have like this fever dream for like the next 90 minutes, and then at the end you have like this kind of like realizational, hey, this is what I think that might have happened, and this is a really interesting aspect of our society that we maybe never looked at before, and maybe we should look into this and how we progress forward in helping people with mental health issues. So yeah, I thought it was really cool. The whole thing. That last part was very intriguing.
Mm.
And just like it just asks, a lot of questions that I don't know if we'll ever get answers to completely, but
Yeah, I think for its time, I mean, it was really progressive. Just based off what we know, historical context. Like we don't have to be historical scholars to kind of get what was happening around that
Yeah.
time. But so he does say like basically the movie says so they kind of go into an insane sorry so they go to the insane asylum instead of being burned, which is
Right.
what they would do before. And so before it was you're kind of going against the church. Now you're kind of going against the law.
Right.
So in the last little segment here, it kind of pulls back to the beginning of where it was kind of showing us the world as how like the Egyptians saw it, sort of thing, how it was seen at that time. They said God is no longer in his 10th sphere. We are no longer sit terrified in church, staring at the frescoes of the devils. The witch no longer flies away on her broom over the rooftops. And then they show a woman pilot at this point of time, right? Which I thought was a really cool connection between women of that time, being or the medieval times being told that they were witches if they're flying broomsticks or whatever like that. And then you see a woman
Mm-hmm.
flying a plane, amazing. Love that juxtaposition there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says, but isn't superstition still rampant among us? Then we see a person reading a tarot deck. We see a psychic. And then we see they say the old and the poor among us are still suffer bitterly. And then they say, aren't women still a riddle to us? And I'm like, I don't know about that one, guy. I don't know about that one. That's very felt very male, very male
Yeah.
comment there. Like women, what are they like? And then they say, and we will console ourselves with the notion that the mildly temperate shower of the clinic has replaced the barbarian methods of medieval times. And then so we see that the woman who was, almost arrested for shoplifting, the kleptomaniac, is in fact in an insane asylum now. But he draws a difference between being poor in an insane asylum and being rich and in like a health facility, right? Like you were
Mm-hmm.
saying, if you were poor and in an insane asylum, it was worse than being in jail. Like it's just a horrible place to be. Whereas here, like she was rich, she had a nice shower, she had attendants, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So then at the very end of the movie, it's a great scene of basically a pyre, people being burned at the stake, at least three people, we assume, which is
Mm-hmm.
being burned at the stake. And then the movie ends with the word slut, which means,
Yeah. I was like, what? Oh,
how
okay.
dare you? How dare you? But it means end in either Danish or Swedish. I'm probably Swedish. So
Swedish, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the end of the movie. So we're going to go ahead and rate it in a second. But I did want to ask you, in general, what did you think of Haxan?
I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was just the imagery was great. Told a fantastic story in a fever dreamish like way, which is sometimes hard to do. But yeah, I mean, it, it was. I think it's a movie that everyone who likes just filmmaking in general, just like how to tell a story in pictures instead of words. It's fascinating for that, for just learning. Um, but it was also just it's a cool little movie with a lot going on, a lot of in the subtext that makes you think about things, and I don't know, it was just really enjoyable overall.
Yeah, I agree. So there's some movies that have historical context. There's some movies that are entertaining. There's some movies that like you want to watch over and over. And this movie for me is all three. It has historical context. It has historical value. Um, and I don't mean so much in what you're learning because there's that as well. There's educational value as well. But it
Yeah.
being a movie from 1922, being a silent film, being a horror film before the genre was even invented, the way in which the story was told, in which a non-traditional way, just just all these things that came together and made just a great, not even it's not a movie. I don't know what it is, but like it's just great. I think the term movie is too limiting for what this is. You
Yeah,
know?
it's just like a film, I guess. You just
Yeah,
call it a film.
film. Yeah,
But I guess it's like it's a documentary slash I don't know, like I don't know, it's kind of like a
You
documentary,
know,
but
what you just said there right now, it reminded me of a movie that tried to do something similar, but I don't think did a good job. The Town That Dreaded Sundown, the original Town That Dreaded Sundown. Have you ever seen
uh
that?
I have, but like it's one of those ones where I watched like 25
Okay.
years ago and I just don't remember.
They try to do it in a documentary style where it's not really story, it's segments. It's very police files where the night of October 8th at 8 p.m. this happened. Then on the morning of September 7th, they found a body, that sort of thing. So I
Yeah.
feel like they was trying to go a little bit for that, but for me, it didn't succeed. But regardless, the back to Haxan, it's just so many good things. Kind of rolled up into one. And I mean, we didn't talk. I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but like the set design,
Mm.
the practical effects, the costumes, the acting, the music from my version. I'm not sure what version you had was cool as well, but I mean, it's just a great film for me.
It felt like it could have been shot like today, but like trying to mimic like what it if like as if it was shot back then. You know what I mean? Like it felt like very, and the same I got the same vibes from um the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It was just like it felt like it could have been made today to make it look like it was made back then. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like
Like
there was a group in the mid '90s. It's like a rock group that made a video like it was a silent film, and I never followed them, so I couldn't. The main singer is
honestly,
bald. Billy Corgan, is that a
oh, like
person?
Smashing
Smashing
Pumpkins.
Pumpkins. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I don't know anything about it, but I thought I remember that.
um Rob Zombie like makes a lot of like what his music videos are like silent film inspired. If you ever
Okay,
watched like some of his like earlier stuff, it's got like the same thing. Like it's just him acting out the scenes with no the his music is obviously playing, but there's no dialogue, and then there's like the words of like what the characters are saying, so it's like silent film inspired. And I kind of got like the same vibe, and maybe it's just because I grew up on like zombie music videos, so that's why it was kind of like coming back to me. But
yeah,
um yeah, I don't know, it was cool, man. It was I'm glad I watched it.
okay. So I guess we can go into ratings then. So we rate things out of 5 upside down crosses.
Okay.
So for Haxan from 1922, Tim, what would you give it?
I'll give it a solid 4. I'm gonna go with 4.
4 upside down crosses. Okay, I can see
Yeah.
that. That's great. I mean, for you in your rating system, what what is like what's 5? Give me an example of what's 5. Do you have an example of
um
what's 5, I should say?
I mean, it would just have to be like the perfect movie. And like for me, the like one of the most perfect films ever made is probably like I'd say Jaws, but like I feel like it is like
Okay.
Jaws. Or like something like Jurassic Park, where it's like, man, I could just watch that movie over and over and over again and not get bored of it. And it's just such a well made film that just I feel like it's gonna stand the test of time. Same thing with Jaws. Like I feel like those movies are just gonna hold up for 100 years.
100
And like
years?
this does definitely
Yeah.
hold up, but I don't know. I just the only reason why I didn't give it a 5 is probably because I felt like it might have been a little bit too repetitive in like the middle of the movie. Like the
Gotcha. Yeah.
three through like 5 were kind of like I felt like it could have been way shorter, and it kind of dragged a little bit for me.
Gotcha.
Uh,
So for you, rewatchability is a big factor when you're rating a movie.
yeah, I think so. I
I
think
gotcha.
that's probably
I think that's
fair.
fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and I would rewatch this. I just don't know if it's something like I'm gonna rewatch every year or something.
Gotcha. Yeah. So for me, again, for like the historical value, for everything I said before, I gotta go 5 upside down crosses.
Oh,
It's a perfect film. It's entertaining. I can watch this. In fact, I have thrown this on, or I have been at parties like Halloween parties where they just throw this on in the background, and you just
Oh
have it
yeah.
going, when you just mute it or whatever, and just like vibing to the party and having this in the background, it's perfect imagery for your Halloween party. It's so fucking fun. And a lot of times what will happen is people just be like, what is this movie? And then they'll just sit
Yeah.
down and start watching it. And like we said, you can keep the music going on, right? Because you don't need to have the audio on. And it's just, I don't know, like I think this is a perfect film to get somebody who's kind of scared of silent films, to
Yeah.
get them interested in it, because this shows you everything that's possible in film, especially
Yeah.
in silent film. So for me, it's a perfect movie. Five upside down crosses. So Tim, what we do now is I ask for a suggestion from you in a
Oof.
similar vein to this movie. So Tim, what would be your suggestion for a movie in a similar vein to Haxan?
I'm going to go with the obvious movie from 2015, and that's Robert Eggers' The Witch.
You know what? That's a great suggestion. I think doing a double bill with Haxan first and then going into the Vavitch, I'm sorry, would be great. I think that would be a great double bill.
Yeah, I think thematically they kind of, match up, where it's like, is it insanity or is it witchcraft? We don't know. And
Yeah.
then yeah, I think it's definitely would be a great double feature. Um I wonder if Eggers was like inspired by this film. I feel like maybe
Oh
he might
yeah.
have.
I've read he does tons of research for his roles, for his movies. I'm sure like Haxan had to be part of that. Like how could you not,
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And then for me, my recommendation would be The Phantom Carriage from 1921, which is another silent film. Basically, on New Year's Eve, the driver of a ghostly carriage forces a drunken man to reflect on his selfish, wasted life. This one was directed by Victor. Wow, I shouldn't have even tried. Victor Zjostrom. Zjostrom. Sorry. So yeah, I think I haven't actually seen this one. This is one that for me, my confession is I haven't seen, but I want to
Mm.
watch it now because I haven't watched. There hasn't been a silent film that I've watched that I haven't enjoyed. I'm sure they're out there, but I haven't come across them yet. So I'm really looking forward to this one, or even like Phantom of the Opera. I mean,
Mm.
that's a great one as well. So all right, so that was the show. Tim, if you could let everybody know again how they could follow you, how they could support your books, how they could support you, all that sort of stuff.
Sure. So you could follow me on pretty much any social media platform, Instagram, Twitter/X, TikTok. I'm pretty much all over the place. My website's timmeyerwrites.com, where you can buy signed copies of my books if you want to. And all my books are available wherever books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. And the newest book is Rainbow Filth, which came out through Ghoulish Books, and you can also get that directly through their website. So
Their website or their store that's in San Antonio. That's awesome. So if you guys are in this Austin, San Antonio area, definitely make your way out there. A lot more people like I follow them on TikTok, and he's just posting what is it called? Like it's called Book Talk, with people who are just big book like bookstagrammers,
yeah,
sort of that, but on TikTok, just making videos of them showing up at the store and all that sort of stuff. That's great to see.
that's
Um,
cool.
if you'd like to follow me, you can follow me or support the show. You can support us at patreon.com/my horror confessional. Tim and I are going to continue our conversation on the Sunday school sessions. That's a Patreon exclusive show. So if you want to listen to that, support the show at Patreon. Thank you, everybody, and we will talk to you next week.
Live spooky, die spooky. Ha ha!